Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here then just welcome, and I'm so happy to have you here. Today I'm out with yet another crochet tutorial, and this time I'm going to teach you how to create this super beautiful crochet wavy top. If you remember, and if you're following already on my channel, you probably have noticed that I have shared a tutorial on how to do this stitch, but this time I'm taking it to the next level and actually making a top by using this stitch. So I hope that you are excited, and I hope that you will enjoy this video. As always, I'm trying to make sure that I'm explaining everything in as much detail as I can, but if you feel like I'm going too slow or too fast, then just feel free to adjust the speed of the video. And besides that, if you have any questions, then just feel free to reach out in the comment section below. And besides that, I have also prepared a written version of this pattern, which is also linked down below and available for purchase on my Etsy store. So of course your support will be super appreciated. But now without further ado, let's jump into it. Here are the materials that I will be using. Here I have different shades of blue of 4-ply cotton yarn, and if you're interested in this specific yarn, here are some more specs just so you can check it out. And besides 4-ply cotton, I will also be using Mohair blend in also different shades of blue and white. And here are some more specs about this specific yarn that I'm using. And of course, besides yarn, you will also need a crochet hook. For this project I will be using 3.5mm hook, and it will also be handy to have some stitch markers as well as scissors. And here is how this pattern is going to look like once I have added already a couple of rows. So this is what we are going to aim for. But now let's get started. First, I will be starting with this darker blue color, and our first step will be to do some chains, and we will basically have to do multiples of 16 plus 2, and the amount of chains done will determine the width of our panels. So just make sure to do some measurements beforehand to make sure that you are creating the size of this panel that you are actually going for. And for myself, for the body panels, I will be doing 112 plus 2 chains, and for arm panels I will be doing 80 plus 2 chains. So let's get started with doing some chains, and for that I'm just grabbing my yarn and starting with a slip knot. So for that I create a loop like this, then I twist it and pull this yarn through the loop to create a knot and also kind of like a bigger loop. And then I can just grab my crochet hook, put this loop on it, and then adjust the size to make sure that it fits the hook size like that. So this is the slip knot, and then we can proceed further with doing some chains, and we just have to do multiples of 16 plus 2. So to do a chain, you just have to grab yarn and pull it through the loop, and then just repeat the process until you have created the amount of chains that you are going for, and just make sure to count along as you are doing this process. Here I have done all the chains that I needed, so now we can proceed further with doing stitches for the first row. And throughout the first row we will be doing single crochets, so let's proceed with that. And our first step basically is to skip the last chain that we did, and then starting from the following one we are starting to do single crochets. And for that we basically just have to go through this chain, then grab yarn and pull it up to have 2 loops on our hook, then yarn over and pull through both loops like this. So this is one single crochet, and then we are just proceeding further with the next chain and doing the same process. So let's do one more together. So going through the chain, grabbing yarn, pulling up to have 2 loops, then yarning over and pulling through both of them like this. So this is how you are doing single crochets, and you basically just have to place one single crochet inside every single chain that you have here until you make it to the very end here. So just go through all of these chains until you reach this point here. Here I have done single crochets inside every single chain that I had, and this is how it looks. So now the first row is completed and we can proceed further with the second row. But before we do so, what I like to do is actually use some stitch markers and place them inside the first and then inside the 16th stitch. So that's what I'm going to do, because it will kind of help me to keep track on all the stitches that I'm doing. However, it's totally optional, and if you feel comfortable or confident enough, it's totally fine to just leave them out. So here I'm just placing one in here, and then from the second stitch I'm starting to count 16, and then in the 16th one I will place one more again, and that's basically how I will do it throughout this row. So I will just proceed with doing that, and if you want you can do it as well, because it helps keeping track once you are like getting busy with this project and just need some extra help in terms of remembering where you have to be. Here I have added all the stitch markers inside every single 16th stitch as well as in the first one, and now we can proceed further with doing stitches for the second row. So for that we first just have to turn or work like this, and then we are just chaining one to get started like that, and this chain of one is not going to count as a stitch. So now we are just proceeding further, and our first step is to do a single crochet inside this first stitch where we have our stitch marker. So I'm just going inside here and doing one single crochet, so like this. So this is our first stitch for the second row, and then we can remove this stitch marker, and I'm just going to place it inside this stitch that we just did, since that's the first one for this second row. And now we are proceeding further with stitches for this second row, and starting from this point all the stitches will be repeating, so just keep that in mind. So our first step is to do a single crochet in this next stitch, so I'm just doing that like this, and then we are chaining one and skipping one. So chaining one and then skipping this following stitch, and in the next one we are doing one half double crochet. So for that you have to yarn over, go through this stitch, grab yarn and pull it up to have 3 loops on your hook, then yarn over and pull through all 3 of them like this. So that is one half double crochet. After that we are again chaining one and skipping one, and then in the following stitch we are doing one double crochet. So for that we are yarning over, going through the stitch like this, then grabbing yarn and pulling it up to have 3 loops on our hook, then yarning over and pulling through 2 like this, yarning over again and pulling through remaining 2 like that. So that is one double crochet, and after that once again we are just chaining one and skipping one, and then in the following stitch now we have to do one treble crochet. So for that we first have to yarn over twice like this, then we are going inside this stitch and grabbing yarn and pulling it up to have 4 loops on our hook, then we are yarning over and pulling through 2 like this, yarning over again and pulling through the next 2, and then yarning over for the last time and pulling through the remaining 2 like this. So this is one treble crochet, then we are chaining one and again skipping one, and in the next stitch we are just doing another treble crochet, so yarning over twice and then yarning over and pulling through pairs of 2 like this. So now we are basically halfway through, so now we just have to mirror everything on the other side, and first we are just starting with chaining one, skipping one, and then doing double crochet in the next stitch like this, then again chaining one and skipping one, and then in the next stitch we are doing one half double crochet like this, and then once again chaining one, skipping one, and then in the next stitch we are doing one single crochet like that, and then in the stitch where we have stitch marker we are again doing one single crochet like this. So now we have completed these first steps that we will have to repeat moving forward, and I can remove this stitch marker and place it on top of the single crochet that
we just did, because in that way it just helps me to track my progress and to memorize what I have to do once I reach it. But now that we are here, we are again just basically repeating all of these steps that we just did, starting from the stitch after the stitch marker. So let's just do it one more time together, this time a little bit faster. So starting with 1 single crochet, then chaining 1 and skipping 1 and doing 1 half double crochet like this, then chaining 1 and skipping 1 and doing 1 double crochet like that, and then we have 2 treble crochets, so yarning over twice and then just pulling through pairs of 2. So this is 1 treble crochet, and then we are adding just 1 more after we have skipped another stitch like this, and then after that we just have double crochet. So again, mirroring all the stitches also on the other side, chaining 1, skipping 1, and then we have half double crochet like that, and then chaining 1, skipping 1, and we have 1 single crochet in the next, and then single crochet in the stitch with stitch marker without skipping anything like this. So now we have repeated that for another time. We are inside the stitch where we have stitch marker, so we are just removing it and placing inside the stitch that we just did like that. So this is the whole process for this second row. So all you have to do is just repeat these steps until you reach the very end of this row, and that's where I'm going to meet you back again to explain the following steps for the third row. So here second row is finalized and this is how it looks. So now we can move further and proceed with the third row, which is going to be a very easy one. So first for that we just have to flip or work on the other side like this, and then we just have to chain 1 to get started, and this chain of 1 is not going to count as a stitch, so just keep that in mind. And now throughout this third row we are basically just going to do single crochets on top of every single stitch that we have, as well as on top of these chains that we have here. So starting from the first one, I'm just adding a single crochet in there, and then also I'm moving this stitch marker again on top of this first stitch that we just did like this, and then again just moving further with the next stitch and also adding a single crochet in there like that. And now we have reached this chain. So here you can actually choose if you want to do your single crochet inside the chain like this, or you can also, to make things easier, you can just do it over the chain like that, so without going inside the chain like this, just completing the single crochet inside this gap. So that's totally up to you if you want it to be a little bit easier or not, but the final look is basically going to be very much the same. But otherwise just continue doing stitches for this third row and just add 1 single crochet on top of every single stitch that we have, as well as every single chain that you have in between the stitches. And as you are doing these stitches, you can also count along to make sure that you have 16 stitches from one stitch marker to the other. And now here I have completed this third row and this is how it looks like. So now we can proceed further with the fourth one. But before we do so, we are actually going to switch colors. I will be using this one, and basically throughout this pattern we will be switching colors after every 3 rows. So let's do it together for the first time. So here where I have my last stitch, I actually haven't completed it all the way through. I have left it with all the loops on my hook with just last yarn over to be done. So I'm just leaving it like this, and then I'm just grabbing my new color that I'm going to use, which is this lighter blue. And then here where I have my existing yarn, I'm just tying this new color around it and making a secure knot like this. So now this yarn is attached to the one that we were using, and we are just pulling this knot closer to our hook, so basically right next to our hook where we have it like this. And then I'm just double checking that it's secure enough, And in this way we are switching colors, so now we can also complete this very last stitch, and for that I'm just using my new color, so yarning over and completing the stitch with that one like this. So now we have switched our colors, and we can also cut off yarn like this old color because we won't need it anymore. So I'm just cutting it off like this, and now we can proceed further with the fourth row. So for that, as always, we are just turning our work like this, and then to get started we just have to chain one like that, and this chain of one is not going to count as a stitch, so just remember that. And then starting from the first stitch we are going to do again single crochets, but this time we will be doing them inside the back loops. So instead of going through these both loops, we will only go through this back loop here like that. So I'm just starting with this first stitch and completing a single crochet by going through the back loop only like this. So here I have done it a couple of times. Again, I'm just remembering about my stitch marker. I'm going to place it here inside the very first stitch that we just did together like that, but otherwise we are now just continuing with single crochets in the back loops only. So this is how it looks so far, so just keep on doing that until you reach the end of this row. Here I have completed this fourth row, and this is how it looks like. So now we can proceed with the fifth one, but actually what I'm going to do, at least for my panel, is that for every other of these middle stitches in between single crochets, I will be switching to the mohair blend. So again, I'm just going to attach new yarn to this last stitch and then proceed with that one, so following the same process that I did before. And then I'm just finalizing this last stitch with that one like this, and then we can actually proceed further with the fifth row. And for that we first just have to turn our work like this, and then our next step is to chain 4. So 1, 2, 3 and 4, and this chain of 4 is actually going to count as one treble crochet, so we just have to keep in mind that this is actually a stitch. And then we can just take our stitch marker that we have here, and because this chain of 4 is a stitch and it's the first one of this row, we can also place a stitch marker here in the fourth chain that we just did, just to remind ourselves that that is actually meant to be a stitch for the following rows that we will be adding. And then once this is done, we can proceed further with the next stitch, and because this is counting as a stitch, it's kind of replacing this one that we have here from the previous row, and therefore the next stitch is supposed to go inside the next one, and in there we are just adding one treble crochet. So I'm going in there and placing one treble crochet stitch like this. So this is how it looks so far, and now we can proceed further with the next one. So first we just have to chain 1 and skip 1, so we are skipping this one, and then in the following space we are just adding 1 double crochet. So I'm going in here and placing 1 double crochet stitch inside there like this. After that we again are just chaining 1 and skipping 1, and then in the next one we are adding 1/2 double crochet. So I'm going through here and adding 1/2 double crochet stitch inside there like this. So this is our progress so far. After that again we are chaining 1, skipping 1, and then in the next 3 we will be adding 1 single crochet in each. So I'm going through this first one and doing 1 single crochet in there like this. So that's 1. Then in the next one we are adding the second one, and then the third right after that like this. So this is how it's looking so far, and now we have basically completed half of it. So now we just have to mirror everything also on the other side. So after single crochets we are starting with chaining 1 and skipping 1, and then in the next we are adding 1/2 double crochet like this, again chaining 1 and skipping 1, and then adding 1 double crochet like that. then again chaining one and skipping one, and then we are adding one treble crochet, which comes right before this stitch marker that we have here, like that. And then our next step is again to chain one and skip one, and we are basically skipping this stitch marker that we have here, and then right after that we are adding again another treble crochet. So I'm just placing it here like this. So this is how it's looking so far, and then we can take out this stitch marker and place it here in this chain one gap that we just created, like this. So this is how it's looking so far, and as you can see, basically all the stitches that we are creating in this space of these 16 stitches. So this is the first segment of 16 stitches that we have completed, and now we can just do the same thing also for the following one. So we already have these two treble crochets, so from now on the process is that we just have to keep on doing the stitches that we had right after the treble crochet from the very beginning. So first we are starting by chaining one, skipping one, then doing one double crochet in the next one, again chaining one, skipping one, then we are doing one half double crochet like that, and then again chaining one, skipping one, and we have 3 single crochets. So I'm just adding first, then also the second, and then also adding the third one, like that. So this is basically half of what we have to do, and we are just mirroring on the other side. So chaining one, skipping one, then doing one half double crochet like this, then chaining one, skipping one, and doing one double crochet like that, again chaining one, skipping one, doing one treble crochet before the stitch marker. So this is that, and then we are chaining one and skipping the stitch marker, and right after stitch marker we are adding one treble crochet again. So I'm just completing that one like this. So here we have created another one of these 16 stitches, and we can take out our stitch marker and place it here in the chain one gap in between both of these treble crochets. So this is how it looks. We have completed another one together. So just keep on repeating these steps for the rest of the row that you have, and then I will meet you back here at the very end. And here I am at the end of this row, and as you can see, we should just end it with having 2 treble crochets, so like this. And it's basically very similar as we started. So in the beginning, including this chain of 4, which counted as 1 treble crochet, we basically have the same thing. And now, since we are here, we can again change back our yarn. So I'm just going one step back with completing this last stitch like this, and then I'm just changing back the color to the one that we had during the previous row. And now we can continue with the 6th row. So for that, again, I'm just flipping my work, and then to begin we just have to chain 1 like that, and then the process and stitches for this row will be basically the same as we had for the 3rd row. We are just supposed to place 1 single crochet on top of every single stitch and every single chain that we have from the previous row. So here I'm just going through this first stitch and placing 1 single crochet in there, and then also doing the same in the following one. Then the next one here I have this chain 1 space, and in this case, since it's quite tricky to work with this type of yarn, I'm just going through this gap and adding a single crochet in there like that, and then again moving further with the next stitch and doing a single crochet in there, then again chain 1 space, so going through the gap, and so on. So this is basically the process. You just have to keep on adding single crochets inside every single stitch and every single chain space that you have. And as you are doing these stitches, just count along to make sure that you have 16 from one stitch marker to the other, and continue doing that until the end of this row, where I'm going to meet you back again. And here I am done with the 6th row, and this is how it looks like. So now at the end of this row, since we are done with our 3rd row, I'm again going to introduce new color. So this last stitch is not finished fully, and I will be adding this white yarn. So again, in the same way, I'm just attaching it by tying it to the existing yarn, and then we can complete this stitch by using our new color like this. And now we can move further with the 7th row. So for that, first I'm just turning my work like this, and basically we are going to do the same thing as we did during the 4th row. So we are starting with chaining 1, which doesn't count as a stitch, and then we are placing single crochets inside the back loops of the stitches from the previous row. So basically the same thing. So here I have already done a couple of them like that, and then we just have to remember to move this stitch marker inside the first stitch that we did starting for this 7th row like that. But otherwise it's the same process, just place 1 single crochet inside every single stitch from the previous row, and do that in the back loops only, and go all the way through until you reach the very end of this row here. And that's where I'm going to meet you back again to explain the next steps that we have to do for this pattern. So here row 7 is finalized, and this is how it looks. So now if I turn it on the other side to proceed working on the next row, basically what we would have to do is just keep on repeating rows starting from row 2 to 7. So to add length to this panel, you would basically just have to keep on repeating these rows. And now for the row 8, I would just have to repeat row 2nd. So literally the same steps that I did here. So just continue with doing that, repeating these rows from row 2 to 7 to add basically length to your panel. And you're more than welcome to mix and match different colors as I'm doing it here after every 3 rows. And also you're more than welcome to use different types of yarn as I did here. So just feel free to do that. Otherwise, just keep on adding extra rows to increase length of these panels, and do that until you have reached your desired length. Here I have already completed 1 panel for the body, and this is how it looks. So as you can see, after doing several rows of this type of pattern, mixing and matching different colors as well as different materials, the final result is super cute. So now I'm just going to proceed further with doing 1 more panel for the body, and then I will do 2 more panels for the arms, where probably the size will have to be adjusted, especially for the width of these panels. But otherwise just continue with repeating this process and creating these panels.
And so here I have prepared all 4 panels. I have 2 for the sleeves and 2 for the body. So now we can actually proceed further with connecting these panels together to create our top. And for that, normally I like to just lay them all out on the floor, so it's easier to understand what goes where and what exactly would be the connection parts, and also just for purposes of this video so you can understand it better. And so here I'm just showing the connection parts, and first I will be starting with connecting shoulder parts. So we just have to make sure that we are connecting equal amount of stitches on both sides, as well as leaving enough space for the neck part, which in my case would be approximately 40 stitches. After that, I will proceed with connecting arm panels to the sides of the body panels, and here we just have to make sure that we are connecting them exactly in the middle. And I would advise to leave in some stitch markers to help keep track of how many stitches have to be connected on each side and where exactly would be middle point, for example, when connecting arm panels. And then once that's done, we can proceed further with connecting the remaining parts. So for that, you basically just have to flip or fold your work with the right side facing inwards, and then we just have to connect bottom parts of the arm panels as well as sides of the body panels. And then to actually connect panels together, you can use whatever method you prefer, but in this video I will be showing you how to do it with slip stitches. So here first I will be connecting these shoulder parts, and for that I'm choosing this color because that will blend in since it was the last one that I used for these rows. And then our first step is to attach yarn. So here I'm just grabbing it and then I'm pulling it through these first stitches from both panels. So with my crochet hook I'm going through this first stitch on this panel and then also through the first stitch on the other panel like that, and then I'm just grabbing yarn, pulling it through like this and making a secure knot to make sure that it's attached and not going to unravel like this. And then we can actually begin. So again, I'm just going through this same place where I attached my yarn, and then I'm just grabbing this yarn and pulling up a loop like this, and then our first step is to just chain one to begin like that. And then after that we can proceed with slip stitches. So to do that you basically just have to go through the stitch on one panel and then through the same stitch on the other panel like that, then grab yarn and pull it through, and also pull it through the loop on your hook like this. So let's do one more together. So going through the next stitch on one panel, next stitch also on the other panel, make sure that it's exactly the same stitch, meaning that in the order that it comes, then grab yarn and pull it through, and then pull it through the loop on your hook like that. So this is how you're doing slip stitches, and then basically just continue doing them until you reach these stitch markers where we will place the last slip stitch, and then basically this shoulder part will be connected. And this is how it looks so far. And then if I turn it on the right side, you can see that we are establishing smooth and neat connection between both panels. And here I have reached the stitch markers where we basically have to put in the last stitch for connecting these parts. So I'm just going through these stitches and performing a slip stitch like that. And now that these parts are connected, we can actually fasten off. So for that you just have to chain one, then make this loop a little bit longer, then grab your scissors and cut off yarn, and as it's cut off you can just tighten it in a secure knot by pulling this loose end. And then this part is connected, and basically you just have to do the same thing also on the other side to connect shoulder parts in there. And then the same process also applies for connecting arm panels to the sides of the body panels. You just have to make sure that you are placing this arm panel exactly in the middle. So it's very handy with stitch markers to kind of note where is the middle point. So it would be here. And then from start and finish, here I have also placed stitch markers. And you can see that we are starting from this light blue row and also ending on the same row. So it's equal on both sides. But otherwise it's the same process. You just have to do slip stitches to connect both of these panels together. The only difference is that you have to be a little bit more strategic because you are connecting stitches to rows. So just make sure that you are spreading these slip stitches out evenly. And if it's handy and useful, you can place multiple stitch markers to note each point and to ensure that they are spread out evenly. And so here I have connected one side, and I just try to make sure that stitches are spread out as evenly as possible. And then I just have to do the same thing with this side, and then also of course for the other arm panel. And if I check it on the right side, you can see that we are establishing smooth connection also in this way. And the same principle also applies for connecting bottom parts of the sleeves as well as sides of the body panels. And perhaps in this case it's a little bit easier because you're connecting row to row and you can easily track since beginning and end of each row is exactly the same. But otherwise you just do the same thing by doing slip stitches. And since we have a mix of different colors, you basically just have to pick a yarn that would blend in the best and then just use it for connecting these parts together. And so here I have connected these parts together, and this is how it looks from the inside. And then if I check it from the other side, you can see that also in this way we have established a smooth connection between panels and between these parts. So now just proceed with doing the same thing also for the other side. And then once everything is connected, we can proceed with the very last step, which would be to weave in all of these loose ends. Unfortunately, we have quite a lot of them, so it's going to take a while, but for weaving in these loose ends, you just have to make sure that your work is turned other way around. And I normally just use my crochet hook, but otherwise you can also use your darning needle. And then to weave them in, we just have to go through the stitches in the back side, and then just grabbing these loose ends and weaving them inside these stitches to make sure that they are not visible and that they are not hanging, and also making sure that our work is pretty from the inside. And here I have finished my top, and this is how it looks on me. I'm super happy with how it turned out, and I hope that you will have fun with this project as well. It is quite time-consuming one, but the end result is totally worth it. But anyways, if you have any questions or need some extra help with this pattern, then just feel free to reach out down below in the comment section. And if you would like to purchase the written version of this pattern, I have linked it down below in the description box. So of course your support will be super appreciated. And if you do manage to recreate this pattern, then just feel free to send me some pictures or tag me in your posts. I would be so excited to see your creations and progress. But otherwise, if you did enjoy this video, then please give me a big thumbs up. And if you're new to this channel, then please subscribe, and I will see you later. Bye!